I was young, a long time ago, perhaps I was, 15, 16 years old, I lived in a very small village in Scotland. There were no buses, so I had to get everywhere by bicycle. And one day I was cycling through the countryside, and I came across a sign, small wooden sign by the side of the road. This is what the sign said, one word, expect. That's all. I was puzzled, but I had to get somewhere, so I carried on cycling. And probably about a mile later, I came across a second sign. The unexpected. And this happened many, many years ago, but I've never forgotten those two signs because they make no sense at all as far as I can see. I've puzzled about it. Expect what? The unexpected. You can't expect the unexpected as far as I can see. I'm no philosopher, but it doesn't make sense to me. Take this event, for example. You all got up this morning, crawled out of bed, made your way across town on, I don't know, tram 55 or bus 71 or on your customized hipster bicycle, coming here. And I imagine you didn't really expect the unexpected. You expected what? A fairly pleasant half an hour's talk from somebody you'd vaguely heard of. You might have preferred somebody more celebrated. I don't know, Ryan Gosling might have got more people out of bed. But there you go, this is presents, this is what you get. You probably expected, even if the speaker wasn't fantastic, charismatic, whatever, well, at least there's free coffee, free croissant. You didn't really expect anything too unexpected. You didn't expect me to come along and show you a picture of a bench in Belgium. Or a car cemetery in the Ardennes. Or you certainly would be surprised if I showed you 5 adorable kittens in a basket. No, this is not really what you want out of this. You want something contained, something manageable. You really don't want me to be going too much into the realm of the unknown, the realm of the mysterious. You don't want this to be too surprising, too challenging. Certainly not at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. But I've been thinking about this concept of mystery, and I think actually it's quite important that we admit a certain amount of mystery into our lives. We allow a certain amount of unexpected to happen. We don't just expect everything to go as expected. And so in the course of this talk, I hope in some way I'll be able to open your eyes to the ways in which the world is a little bit more mysterious, a little bit more unexpected than you could ever expect. I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about myself. I'm not going to tell you all the details that you already probably know. You can go onto Facebook and you can find out what I was doing last summer. You can go onto LinkedIn and you could find out if I'm even qualified to give this presentation. And I think I'm not, actually. I want to kind of go into the slightly more mysterious aspect of my identity. The bit that even Facebook and Google haven't quite got. And this is my career as an actor. You may laugh, you may say this is no actor we see here, but, bear with me. I've been on the stage in many of the great theatres of Europe, Vienna, Amsterdam, Edinburgh. In fact, only a few nights ago, I was performing on stage in St. Nicholas in Belgium. In a couple of nights' time, I will be in Santiago de Compostela. Yes, exactly. Amazing, amazing. You never realized this. It's not on my CV, and it's a strange sort of theatrical life that I have, because I'm never physically on the stage. I'll try and explain. I took part some years ago, I was invited some years ago to take part in a theatrical production by a company based in Antwerp, which of course is called Berlin. I'd never heard of them, but I went along, and what I had to do was I had to sit in a very cold warehouse in Borgerhout in Antwerp for about 8 hours, speaking to camera, recording a presentation, which was then put onto digital format and joined up with 30 other similar presentations to form a kind of immersive theatrical event. It might help if I can show you an image. We'll say goodbye to these adorable kittens. This is the final result. And you can see I've put arrows to help identify. That looks very like me there. And that could be in Vienna, that could be in New York, and that is me on stage in a theatre, a genuine theatre, along with my other 30 companions, performing. And that is the basis of my theatrical career. It hasn't really progressed beyond that stage. It's led to some quite strange encounters with people. I was at a sort of cocktail party in Brussels, and somebody came up to me and said to me, "I saw you in Prague." And I thought this was a little bit mysterious because I'd never been to Prague. And it slowly turned out that, of course, she had seen me in Prague in the production by Berlin that was filmed in Antwerp. It's very mysterious, very mysterious. But what was particularly confusing, puzzling, mysterious about this production was I didn't actually play myself. I played a character called Jonathan Stein. You may or may not have heard of Jonathan Stein. He's actually a fictitious character as far as I know, so it's very unlikely that you will have heard of him. There are real Jonathan Steins, but that wasn't the one I was playing. I was playing a fictitious Oxford professor, which I did rather well. This looks very like me, but if you go onto Google and you search for Jonathan Stein, among the many images you get is this one. And that looks to me very like me. But this is Jonathan Stein, Professor Jonathan Stein. You can see he's in his Oxford study with his old furniture. And what's particularly interesting is he's got his favourite toy helicopter. I don't know if you can see it, on top of the wooden cupboard above his head. And there at the bottom, it says, I'll show you what it says. Jonathan Stein, Oxford University. This is confusing because this is on the internet. This is what you get when you Google Jonathan Stein, and it doesn't look like Jonathan Stein to me. And this is part of the mystery of life, that things aren't really at all what they seem. And even if you use the internet, that great resource of knowledge, it can sometimes lead you astray to areas which are quite confusing and mysterious. When I'm not impersonating Jonathan Stein, what do I do? What I like to do is I like to write about Brussels. I like to write about Belgium. I always tell people I'm in love with Brussels, and they always look at me as if I'm completely mad. It's a very, what should we say? Well, and it's not even a real kind of love affair. I mean, Brussels and I, we kind of live together. We kind of get on. We kind of share the same house, but it's not passion. And sometimes I'll go astray. I'll have a one-night stand with Paris, with Amsterdam. But I always seem to come back at the end of the day to Brussels. I don't know why. I've lived here, 26 years. And I think the things I like about Brussels are quite weird things, quite small things. I like things like those trams that you have in Brussels. There's very old trams that rumble through the streets at night. And I find them very mysterious. I like the cafes where everyone seems very miserable for some reason. I don't know. As if your favourite dog has just died. But I like that. I like the oldness. It's a kind of city of mystery. It's a kind of city of what can we say? Secrets. It's a kind of city of secrets. And so finally, I decided to settle in Brussels about 26 years ago. I became a journalist, which is about the only thing I can do. And eventually I thought that I knew enough about Brussels to write a book about it. But I thought, I can't write the sort of books that you usually get. Beautiful Copenhagen, wonderful Paris, the treasures of London. I thought Brussels was different and deserved a book that was kind of appropriate. So I came up with this concept of 500 hidden secrets of Brussels, which when I put it to a publisher, his initial reaction was to laugh very loudly. So I'm very lucky that finally I managed to persuade him to publish it. The kind of things that are in this book, well, there's a restaurant I love, which is in the forest, which is so hard to find that even when you take a taxi to get there, the taxi driver gets lost and finally throws you out of the cab because he can't find the place. Another thing I like is the Wirtz Museum. I don't know if any of you know the Wirtz Museum. Beautiful museum, which is impossible to visit because the opening times are so unhelpful that you will arrive there and you will find somebody outside the locked gates of the Wirtz Museum crying because they've come all the way from the United States to visit this museum, which is closed because of, sickness or repairs or circumstances. After I've written the book, I developed this idea of walks in Brussels. I thought we don't walk enough in Brussels. We drive everywhere, we take the tram, and it's actually quite an interesting city to walk through. The only way you can find hidden secrets is by walking. So I started developing walks in Brussels, and I would again just kind of take people to the most obscure, the most interesting places, the kind of little narrow lanes in the centre of town that nobody ever goes down. Or I take them to see that stretch of the city wall that runs through a hotel car park. Or I take them, my favourite place, the little temple in the Saint-Contenaire Park, which contains a sculpture which is considered so pornographic that it has been closed to the public for more than 100 years. It's impossible to see this entire sculpture, but there is a keyhole you can look through, and you can get a tiny glimpse of this incredibly erotic, forbidden sculpture. And I was going to show you a picture of it, but then I thought, I can't do that, not in a public gathering. So I thought, I'll just show you a picture of 3 baby goats dressed in cardigans. And you'll have to imagine this incredible sculpture. So, while I was developing these walks, I decided that Brussels is a city of intelligent people. So I had to make my walks intelligent, not just random looking at this and that, but actually based on solid philosophical theory. So I went, of course, to the French philosophers, and I discovered a philosopher, a writer called Guy Debord, who basically worked in the 1950s, 1960s, and he developed a theory of urban walking, which is really quite interesting. And he based it on research that he carried out on a single female student in Paris in 1956. And what he did, a little bit creepy, he studied the way she moved around Paris. And he found a very interesting phenomenon. This is a map of Paris, beautiful Paris. This triangle basically shows the route she followed on a daily basis in Paris. And the 3 points which are marked with an arrow are the 3 points that she would, that her journeys took her to. One was her apartment, one was the university where she was studying, Sorbonne, I think, and the third one was her boyfriend's apartment down in the south. That was her day-to-day passage through Paris. And Guy Debord decided this is terrible. This is not the way to explore a city, to discover a city, to be present in a city. So he developed a theory of the dérive, an idea that you had to explore a city, you had to discover unexpected areas. And he encouraged people to do quite strange things, like if there was a transport workers' strike in Paris, you would hitch a ride with a random person across the city. If a building in your neighborhood was about to be demolished, you would break in at night. If there was an underground passage that was forbidden to the public, you would go into it. And this was his theory, and I thought this is an excellent theory. And I started to develop walks based on this theory. And then I thought, well, let's be original. Let's come up with my own theory. Let's see if I can do something. And I came up with my own theory eventually, which I call the 500 steps. 500 steps, and this is it. You can try it. It's very easy. All you do is you go outside of your house and you walk for 500 steps. Yes, exactly. It's very easy. Try it. And then you stop. Then you stop and look at what you can see. And the things you see in Brussels are really quite extraordinary when you do that. Not always positive, but you will see, for example, a very exquisite letterbox on a house, or a very strange way in which the municipality has repaired a hole in the road. But I can guarantee you will always find something interesting. Another thing I thought was another interesting way of exploring the city is to look at how children explore a city. Young children, small children, children of about 2 years, 3 years, who've just learned to walk. And the way they explore a city is very interesting, because they like to look at everything. They like to look at everything, and they like to touch everything that's on the ground, and they like to eat everything that's on the ground. It's a very hazardous way to explore the city, but a very inquiring way. And I get the feeling that young children up to the age of 5 or 6, see the world as a very mysterious place, an extremely mysterious place. And then that sense of mystery seems to go at a certain point, and we become a little bit accustomed. Everything seems a bit ordinary, we don't stop in the street and pick things up anymore, which is probably just as well. The mystery goes, and that in a way is a little bit sad. We lose that sense. But also, I think it's probably necessary that we don't take an hour and a half to walk 2 city blocks, that we have to kind of eliminate things, cut out the mystery. But what I would like to suggest in this talk is that we should try and get back at some point, at some time, perhaps just at the weekend, some inquiring sense, some sense of mystery. And that led me to eventually realize that I hadn't really thought about what I mean by mystery. I hadn't really defined that very well. And so I started doing a little bit of thinking about that. And I finally decided that the person who had said the most interesting thing about mystery was a person called Donald Rumsfeld, who you may or may not know. He was, I have to take you back to 2002, the year 2002, which was a lovely year, much nicer than this year, I could say. But it was also a year in which strange things were happening in the world, very strange things. And Donald Rumsfeld was the United States Secretary of Defense, so he was in charge of the military. And in 2002, there was a period of build-up of military aggression towards Iraq. Iraq was the country that people thought was causing a lot of trouble in the world, and the Americans wanted to deal with it. And Donald Rumsfeld was in charge of US policy and was poised to attack Iraq and bomb it back to the Middle Ages. That was his plan. Anyway, what happened and what sticks in my mind is a press conference that happened in 2002. I'll try and recreate what happened. A journalist asked Donald Rumsfeld a question. He asked him whether there was any truth in rumors that Baghdad, in fact, did not have weapons of mass destruction. It was not involved in supporting terrorism. That was the question that was being asked of Donald Rumsfeld. And his reply was quite staggeringly stunning. He said, "As you know, there are things that are known, and we call them known knowns. There are also known unknowns, which are things we know we don't know. And there are also unknown unknowns, which are things we don't know we don't know." And there's a little bit of silence, and you can watch this video on YouTube, and there's a little bit of silence, and then the journalist who asked the original question said, "Are you saying that these are unknown unknowns?" And then Donald Rumsfeld replied, "I don't know which they are." And at first, I think most people were like me. Most people thought Rumsfeld has gone completely mad. The Americans have just lost it. And then I thought, maybe he's actually onto something there. Maybe he has hit on an essential part of the knowledge that we carry in our heads. Maybe he has actually pinned it down brilliantly. And I thought, yeah, let's try and think of this. Okay, we start with known knowns, things we know. We're all Belgian, so of course we know this is not a pipe. Or is it? This is something we know, definitely. So that's clear. But then, known unknowns. I came up with this. What is pi? Well, we kind of know there is something called pi. We could kind of vaguely say it's something to do with circles and circumferences and things like that. But we don't really know that pi is 3.141,592,653,589. 79323846264338327. It goes on, it goes on. That is something we know we don't know, but we could find it out on the internet, so there's nothing to worry about there. But then, unknown unknowns. Well, being a lazy sort of journalist, I typed unknown unknowns into a Google search box to see what the internet would tell me. And here's one of the images the internet came up with. Well, that explains it, I thought to myself. You have the sort of grey area, known knowns, blue known unknowns, grey unknown unknowns, and then the sort of the lines. I'm puzzled about all these intersecting lines. I think there are some things that she knows that he knows, but she doesn't know that he knows that she knows it, and that's it, that kind of middle bit there. I didn't find that, to be honest, incredibly helpful. Thank you, internet, but really, if that's the best you can do, Google, then I don't know why we bother. So, I thought about this carefully, and for a long time I couldn't think, how am I going to explain unknowns to people? And I came up with an idea. And it's quite easy. All you have to do is close your eyes. And nothing terrible will happen, I promise. But just in case, put your phones inside your pockets. I'm going to, so everyone close their eyes. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to ask you to keep your eyes closed until you hear a number. The number is 487. And I don't want you to open your eyes. You must promise not to open your eyes until you hear the number 487, or terrible things will happen to you. With your eyes closed, I want you to think of a bridge. And this is a bridge that goes between two European countries. And in the middle of this bridge, there is a body. And this body is apparently dead. And the police are called to investigate from the two countries that this bridge connects. One is Denmark and one is Sweden. And the detective that comes from Denmark is a man, and he's kind of a bit ruffled, and he's a bit amusing, and he's fun to be around. And the detective that comes from Sweden is a woman, and she's rather a difficult woman. She's rather brittle and difficult to get on with. And if you have a television, you possibly know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a Swedish mystery crime series called The Bridge. And this is one of many mystery crime series that have become very popular on television across Europe and across the world. And there is something about Scandinavian mystery that we absolutely find irresistible. I have a theory that it's something to do with Scandinavia, it's something to do with the coolness, it's something to do with the sexiness of Scandinavia. And I have a theory that you could create a mystery series, a crime series, and give it the name of an IKEA flat pack wardrobe, and people would watch it. They would watch it if it was called, oh, I don't know, Ardvik, or Bjorgen, or anything like that, because we just absolutely love these Scandinavian mystery series, which are so cool and so engaging and so mysterious. But let's be very clear about this. We wouldn't actually like to be in a Swedish mystery series. We would not like, for example, in this very room, for there to be a dead body. found on the floor. We would find this very upsetting. And the police would be called, for heaven's sake. The Brussels police would have to come to investigate. They would have to come from the police station and they would have to come across the pedestrian area on foot. And it would take half an hour for them to get here. And they would come and they would interview all of you individually, one by one, in Dutch or in French, according to the language you prefer. And they would ask you about the person who is dead, who turned out to be the speaker invited to this event. He is lying dead on the floor in front of you. Don't open your eyes, it's too horrible. And the police would ask you questions about the speaker. Did you know him personally? No. He seemed quite a nice person, you might say. But then you would say, but there were things that were odd about him. There was, for example, his strange belief that he was an Oxford professor, when clearly he knew nothing about anything. There was his strange obsession with adorable kittens, which we couldn't understand. There was that book he wrote. What was it called? 600 Mysteries of somewhere or other. And then somebody would say, there is the answer to the mystery. I understand what happened. And the answer was contained in number, what shall we say, 326, 205, 487. And now you may open your eyes. I told you earlier, I warned you, expect the unexpected. What is this we see before us? Lying dead on this floor, with blood pouring out from what must be a gunshot wound, and his papers scattered on the floor. What a tragedy to happen in the Boer Schouwburg on a Friday morning when all you thought was you were going to have a pleasant discussion and some croissant. What on earth is going on here? I have no idea. But the police, the Belgian police informed me that this person you see here, who resembles me in many details, is in fact an imposter. He is he's wanted across many European countries for impersonating people. And he managed to impersonate me. He created a false Facebook page that looked like me. He created a false email address. And so, when Carmen invited me to come here, she had no idea that she was in fact inviting Jonathan Stein, who now lies... Don't worry, he's not dead. The ambulance will arrive. It's coming through the pedestrian zone, so it will take some time. Jonathan Stein! But the Belgian police finally cracked this imposter, this scoundrel who took my identity and stole it and stood in front of you pretending to be me. But the police, they looked at two pictures. Stein, Blyth. They look almost identical. This man has copied me in almost every detail imaginable. It is horrifying. But the police, using the most advanced digital techniques known to the Belgian police, spotted certain differences. A shoulder that was slightly higher, a nose that wasn't quite as straight. Yes, they cracked this problem. And now, fortunately, the world is rid of this so-called Jonathan Stein. Mystery. I've not got long to talk about it because Stein took up so much time. There's very little time left. But I really have to say something serious, otherwise you'll go home thinking that was a complete waste of time. So I'm going to try and say something serious in the last few minutes. that are left to me. Mystery. Mystery is something that can be very frightening. We can be afraid of things we don't know, the unknown unknowns. They can terrify us, they can terrorize us very easily. We know this in Brussels. We have police in the streets, we have gigantic concrete barricades to stop anything happening, to stop the unknown entering into our lives. But the message I want to get across to you today is that we should perhaps sometimes try and reject that fear and embrace the unknown, embrace the fear that is building up around us. And to help me explain this, I've enlisted, as every speaker I've ever heard does, Albert Einstein, who of course said everything that had to be said. And he said this: the most beautiful and deepest experience a man can have is the sense of the mysterious. Einstein said this, the great scientist said this, so that's important. I'm not going to read the rest because it's all blah blah. I thought, yes, how can we put this into concrete terms? And I thought of a smartphone. Think of a smartphone. Think of 20 years ago. Smartphones simply didn't exist. If I wanted to send a photograph to my sister in Scotland, I had to first of all find a camera, I had to load the film, I had to take a photograph, I had to take the photograph to be developed, I had to wait 3 days for it to be developed, I had to then address an envelope, put the photograph in an envelope, post it at the post office, send it to Scotland, and it would arrive perhaps 3-4 days later. An enormous procedure. Now with a smartphone, snap, click, and it's off. It's on the internet. Everyone can see it. Amazing. How did this happen? And I think if you think about this, that will help you understand this idea of the unknown unknowns. There was a time when a smartphone was an unknown unknown. It was impossible to even conceive it, to have it in your head. But now it exists. You've got it in your pocket. It's real. How does this happen? How do you get from the unknown unknowns to something real and interesting and exciting and positive? And that's where I'd like this discussion to take us, to this idea that the unknown unknowns are actually quite exciting. And I've got one final quote from the poet Rilke. And what he said, I think, is very interesting because it helps us conquer this fear we have of the unknown. And he was writing to a young poet who, and he was talking about fear, talking about overcoming fear, and about fairy tales in which dragons turn out to be princesses, these old European fairy tales. And he wrote, perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and with courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love. And I think that quote, which is on the internet, of course, kind of gives a direction to probing through mystery, that mystery can actually lead you to exciting, interesting, new places. And it doesn't have to be terrifying, it doesn't have to be terrorizing. And I think if we spent more time being positive about mystery and actually embracing it, there would be interesting, exciting discoveries that could be made that we can't even, sitting in this room, conceive in our heads because we are stuck with what we've got and we can't imagine it. But we have to do this because that's the way we progress. And that's about all I can say because time has run out and it's time for questions and hopefully answers.